Hi, welcome to Punchline Talks. My name is Mark Owen, and each week I invite a panel of business experts to go over the national newspapers, find out what's happened in their own individual business and their own individual sectors, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. Before I start, I'd just like to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors, who also provide me with fantastic coffee every week too. Anyway, let's go into the panel. So let me introduce you guys. It's Ian Crowder. He's a spokesperson for GWSR, Gloucestershire Warwickshire Steel Railway, and for 20 years he was head of public relations of the AA Insurance and Financial Services. We've got Richard Jones. He's the managing director of JEC Electrical. He is Gloucestershire EV charging guru, and I'm sure he's going to take time out to discuss about the generous EV infrastructure grants that are going on at the moment. And we've got Stuart Emmerson, director of business development at Hartpury University and Hartpury College. There are 4,600 students, over 700 staff, and a turnover of around 50 million, give or take. Anyway, let's have a quick look at what's making the headlines in the national press today. With the Metro, EODO, we've done the Cup. The Daily Express, just how cynical can rail unions could be, and my little mouse has suddenly decided not to work. The Daily Mail, don't you just love Kate? Look at it, absolutely. Vindictive, says the Daily Mail about the planned strikes during the football. The NHS doctors stranded in Sudan after the UK refused airlift. The Daily Telegraph, my place in the coronation proves king embraces diversity. The Times, gambling curbs to save young from addiction. The Guardian, watchdog Met may be failing to spot serial killers. The Financial Times, Tories to strike sunset clause from bill to scrap EU law. And I'm sure that'll have something to do with our very own Alex Chalk, who's in the heart of the government now. The Daily Mirror, please help us. The Daily Star, first we caught an elf, now we've got a goblin. God knows what that's all about. God knows what that's all about. I just love the Daily Star. Right. Anyway, let's start with you today, Stuart. What has caught your eye in the national press today?
Okay, Mark. So I've got three articles that caught my eye. The first in the Financial Times, this ongoing story around the CBI, the business lobbying group. So many moons ago, I worked for the Federation of Small Businesses in Westminster, and I just thought, these organisations are obviously vital for influencing the business agenda and feeding up from the ground vital information. But I just thought it was a really salient reminder of how when trust breaks down and when an organisation breaks that trust, how quickly a brand, an organization can fall. I think we all remember the jewelry, the Ratner's jewelry, and his comment around total crap and how quickly that fell. And I just thought it's going to be really interesting to see how the proposed rebrand materializes and whether actually it'll have any kind of impact moving forward.
And they're hemorrhaging money as well, aren't they?
They're hemorrhaging money. People are understandably leaving because they don't want to be associated with the brand. Lots of allegations flying around and more to come out, I think. But as I say, a salient reminder of how quickly things can change for any well-known brand. The second one was in the Guardian. So this was an opinion piece by Andy Beckett. Where are the riots? Have we just accepted greedflation? So this is the ongoing inflationary pressures focus. And as a kind of family of five, I feel that pinch massively. And I think the article starts off, this country's rate of inflation, the worst in Western Europe, is everywhere in most people's lives. In our anxious shopping and conversations, our late night fears and fraught pay negotiations, our cancelled or rationed pleasures, and our sense of Britain's shrinking possibilities. After the pandemic, Brexit, and years of austerity and political chaos, to be experiencing the biggest sustained fall in the national standard of living for more than 60 years feels like the final straw. I think why I was really interested in this one is it speaks to the kind of economy we want moving forward. We clearly want an economy that incentivizes entrepreneurs and wealth creation. but not at the expense of driving huge inequality. And it feels like at the moment the balance isn't quite right. And that links just onto the final piece very quickly, which relates to the education sector. Again, I've got a eldest daughter who is started her GCSEs. A challenging time for families out there whose children are going through a similar thing. And it was just really, there's going to be a bit of a reset in terms of what we've seen, perhaps in terms of grade inflation and the challenges of grading during COVID. But of course, that's against the backdrop of students who have missed out on a lot of education this year. And I think the government's rollout program hasn't really impacted in the way they wanted it to. So an anxious time for parents and students, and again, perhaps those most vulnerable in society at greatest risk in terms of not being many parents are supporting students with private tuition, etc., but not everyone can afford that. So a really kind of a cacophony of challenges there, I think. But 3 articles that caught my eye this morning, Mark.
Thanks very much. A real good mix there as well. And it's funny you should mention the rising cost of prices. We did a story the other day about peppers going up 300%. I mean, it is absolutely crazy out there. Thanks ever so much for that. Let's bring you in, Richard. Thanks ever so much for joining Punchline Talks today. So what have you got for us today, please?
Okay, Mark. Yeah, I've got a couple of stories from the Times. So the first one is, the headline is, "Give mowing a miss in May to help bugs."
Oh, yeah.
So the No Mow in May campaign, which I think is a great idea. So it's saying on a two-pronged effort. It says councils, groundkeepers, highway agencies and park keepers to join private gardeners in abandoning the lawnmower next month to protect bees and boost biodiversity, conservationists have urged. So what it's saying, though, it's a double win. It says No Mow May campaign as a way of helping both the country's bugs and councils' budgets. So we all know that obviously council budgets are tight at the moment. So it seems an absolutely fantastic way of a win-win. So it's lovely to see the manicured lawns of, around Cheltenham, the beautiful, it's gorgeous, but you don't necessarily need to see the verges mowed on such a regular basis. And it says here there are 400,000 kilometres of road verges in the UK, equating to the area the size of Dorset. So it says not all can be left unmown because of the need to maintain sightlines, but the sheer scale, said Schofield, this is the guy who wrote it, meant that if other councils followed, it could be nationally significant. So it says in the past century, 97% of the country's historic wildflower meadows has been lost. Many could be restored by simply not mowing. So I've got a tiny little postage stamp. So I might try and create a little part of my postage stamp to hand it over to help the cause.
I think so. Great. I did this last year actually, and and it was amazing the amount of butterflies and bees suddenly that popped along my garden, and I think it's such a great idea. Have you noticed you don't get as many bugs on the front of your car as we used to in the 70s and 80s?
But it's funny, my garden's changed from a football pitch when my son was young. It was a football pitch, and then it turned play park, then football pitch, and gradually over the years we've turned it into an actual garden, and the lawns got smaller and smaller, and we'll sit watching everything going on. It's fantastic. So it's all great. So the second story I've got, obviously this is my area, so it says car charging rivals to take on the system. So it's 18 of Britain's largest electric car recharging network providers have joined forces to create a trade association in an attempt to get the government to sort out planning and grid connections. Charge UK, as a group it called itself, represents a sector that has committed 6 billion of private capital through to 2030, which it says, despite the barriers which are in its way, it will double the installed capacity of public chargers from 40,000 to 80,000 over the next 12 months, rising to the project what they want to get by 2030 is 300,000. Now this is obviously key to where people, this is the comfort blanket that people need to be able to adopt, is knowing that you can charge when you're on the road, when you're on the move. So yeah, those are my two stories.
So you actually obviously think this is a fantastic idea then?
Well, it's interesting.
Isn't it by time we've done this, Richard?
Yeah, I think it's really sensible. The only company that hasn't joined up yet is Tesla. which, well, hopefully they sort of go their own way, Tesla, but hopefully they'll join in. It's interesting because BP and Shell are involved, so they must have some real financial muscle. And as I understand it, it's not my world, but lobbying plays a big part in things. It make the world go round. So when you consider that these people will be replacing the likes of BP and Shell and all the things, it's an absolutely ginormous step. So yeah, we're long overdue, but I think very, very sensible.
Okay, thanks ever so much.
Yeah, I
Great.
couldn't agree more
Well,
with
Richard,
that.
thank you for that. And I know Ian is really big into EV as well. Ian, thanks for joining Punchline Talks today. What have you picked out for us today from the
Well, a couple of things. Yes, I am into EVs, and there is a kind of relationship here with. There's a couple of stories. One which particularly affects my interest as being involved with the Gloucester Warwickshire Steam Railway is that in a number of publications, none of the national ones actually yet, but I'm sure that will come. And it's an issue that has been covered in the nationals. Is the fact that the Fosse Fran open cast coal mine in South Wales has been told it must close. It's been running since September, having applied for planning permission to continue its operations. And it's been carrying on actually without planning permission, producing coal. Its main customer is the Port Talbot Steelworks. So the coal comes out of the ground and doesn't move very far to manufacture our steel. But as a sideline, it also produces lump coal, which is some of the best coal suitable for steam locomotives. It's low in impurities. It burns very hot, and it's economical. And that source has come to an end. And it's the only coal mine in Britain that produces coal suitable for steam locomotives. This means that we're going to have to acquire our coal now from other sources, and sources include Colombia and Poland. And you think about the impact of shipping coal that sort of distance across half the world when we have the stuff underneath our feet. But you know, it's been hailed as a triumph by the Green lobby, of course, and Mark Drayford, who's the First Minister in the Welsh Minister, has welcomed it, saying we should not be extracting finite resources from the globe in an era of climate change. But the fact is, of course, that Britain still burns about 6.5 million tons of coal a year for steel production, cement production, and also a certain amount of electricity generation when carbon-free sources aren't producing enough. So this is all having to be imported now. So yes, so that was my first story. And the second,
Ian, how much will this add on to sort of the cost for you guys then?
well, it's already added on to the cost. The one source of coal was Russia. Actually, Russia produced the cheapest coal in the world, but of course that source has now been cut off, so we've had to look elsewhere. And the effect is that the price of coal over the past 3 years has risen 3 times. We used to pay about £120 a tonne for Welsh coal. The Welsh mine has gone through some difficulties, and their price has risen as well. We're now paying over £400 a tonne for coal, and of course. But we haven't increased the prices of our fares because we understand the economic difficulties that families looking for a day out are going through.
Yeah, must make a massive hit on your bottom line then, especially as a charity.
It does, and indeed, 1 or 2 heritage railways. A couple of days ago, the Severn Valley Railway launched an appeal for £1.5 million just to keep afloat because its finances come to an end. They've taken a lot of difficult financial decisions, such as making redundancies, reducing the number of trains they run, reducing the number of trains that are operated by steam. We haven't taken those decisions, and we are in the very fortunate position in that we only have the equivalent of 8 full-time employees. but we have 850 volunteers, which I think is the biggest ratio of volunteers to paid staff on any of Britain's heritage railways.
Right. Well, we'll come back to that in a second when we come to your section. We'll obviously hear more about the railways. Unfortunately, we've run out of time for the papers now. We're going to go back over to you, Stuart. Thanks ever so much for that, Ian. Stuart, let's talk about Hartpury University. What's going on there in the hot seat of business development for the uni?
Well, it's an exciting time at Hartpury. As you know, there's ongoing development. So probably one of the most exciting developments we're looking forward to is our university learning centre, which is currently being built. For those that know Hartpury, as you come up the drive, it's on your left-hand side, and it will be home to around 2,000 students, supporting them through their careers, but with really good links into both the Forest of Dean and Gloucester and Environ. So we're looking forward to that large capital project. But perhaps one of the most kind of exciting things for Hartpury is that it is our 75th anniversary this summer. So Hartpury's got a really interesting history. Started its life back in 1948 as an agricultural college, and it's been on somewhat of a journey since then in terms of it's the investment and branching out into its specialisms of obviously agriculture, sport, equine, animal and vet nursing, and so that's going to be a real cause for celebration through the summer to acknowledge that, and I'm sure there'll be alumni and events attached to that. The second thing is we're entering a phase of really exciting kind of summer events. So I'd recommend that you all take a look at our website, and the highlights are Open Farm Sunday, which is on the 11th of June. Our 5-star dressage festival is the 4th to the 9th of July, and our international horse trials in August 9th to the 13th. They're really fantastic family events, affordable. And if for those that haven't been, I'd really recommend you go along. It's top quality action, fantastic facilities, and a really lovely day out. And then lastly, I was just going to highlight Hartpury University Football Club is doing incredibly well and has reached the final of the playoff for just checking for the Division 1 playoff in the Hellenic League. Now, this is significant because the winner will go into what's called step 5 of the pyramid of the English Football League, and that will place Hartpury University along with Loughborough as the highest ranked football club of any university. So it'll be a real coup and attraction for those who want to benefit from our dual pathway of study and playing sport. So by the time this goes out, we'll know the results, and we're very hopeful that Hartpury will continue its football progression through the leagues. Not that many leagues away from the Football League itself. So really exciting times, really exciting times.
Fantastic. Sorry, Ian, you want to come in on that?
No, I was just going to congratulate you. I think that there's some exciting things going on there. And hopefully you get a lot of support. I've not been to Hartpury College, and I must do that. So thank you. Yeah,
we'll have to get you there. Obviously, the rugby and the equine gets a lot of exposure, and rightly so. Yes. But there are 10 sports academies at Hartpury, and obviously the animal and the agriculture and the agri-tech as well is really developing. So we'd love to have you, Ian and Richard, and welcome you for a tour, and no problem at all. We've got some EV chargers in, Richard, as well, so we're future-proofing that side of things as well.
There we go. And if you need more, Richard's your man, right?
Richard, absolutely.
Yes.
Richard is slowly building his portfolio of EV charging across the county and business parks and trainings. You just done a big thing with Marquee Builders, haven't you, in Premier Kitchens on Richard?
Yeah, they're a great company. They're really on the ball. They're way ahead of their time. So we've now installed 28 EV charge points there. On top of their megawatt of solar and their biomass. So they're basically running completely off grid. They're really, and their EV uptake is huge. So yeah, they're a model for the company of the future, Marky.
Yeah, and so what other companies have you sort of worked with, or are you seeing more and more companies coming forward? Because you know we've talked about this before, you and I, about the sort of grants available and these infrastructure grants available, and they're going to run out, isn't it? Time is running out to grab them. What exactly is it?
So basically, so for many years now, we've been processing lots of different grants for EV charge point infrastructure, or EV charge points, for many years now. The biggest one that most people would have known about was the home charge scheme, and it was quite well publicised that it was ending. So a lot of people thought that the grant had ended then, but far from it. They just changed focus, and now they're about to change focus again. So March 31st, 24, it's the end of all grants. So no more EV grants. But, I don't know why they've done it, but they have. So what I do know why they've done it, they've changed the focus. They've changed it for on-street parking, helping councils. It's absolutely fine. It's our journey. So yeah, the grants are available. Most companies, charities, organisations are available for some kind of grant. The minimum grant would be 350 per socket. But the one I really want to focus on today, well, there's another one as well. The residential car parking schemes worth up to £30,000, like a block of flats. That's really generous. But the one, because it's a business news sort of site you run, I'm assuming there's quite a lot of people watching and listening to this that are part of an SME. Now, the SME infrastructure grant for staff and fleets is very generous indeed. It's worth up to £15,000 per site, up to 5 sites per company. It's really generous. I urge anyone from an SME to just to look it up, because you've got literally, these things have to be installed by the 31st of March. And
So
we're
sorry,
seeing
let's go back then. So if I had my old fire station again, and I've got 5 electrical car points, how much would that save me then?
well, basically what you need to benefit from the infrastructure grant, what you need is 5 available parking spaces. Now, you don't need 5 charge points fitted. So what we do as a minimum, you have to have 5 available parking spaces. Now, for each of those, we need to prove that we put in EV infrastructure in those 5 spaces. And for that, you get £500 per parking space.
Wow.
But you need just 1 working charge point. So for the working charge point, you get an extra 350. So the minimum grant available is 2,850. Then what we do, we just put some kind of electrical supply in. So we've done lots of school. So basically, we put 4 dummers in probably, and then 1 working charge point. Now the grant is going to end. I'm probably encouraging people to maybe go for the extra couple of points, so you at least got the infrastructure. So, and that goes up to £15,000 per site, or 75%. It's very generous.
So you save 1,500. Sorry, to get 1,500. You save £1,500, and actually it costs you 350.
No. The minimum grant you can get is £2,850.
Right.
And I did a job last week for a local business, and we put in, because it depends on what the install is. That took a job. He got £4,250. He ended up paying £850 for 1 working charge point and 7 dummy units. Now, these units, you just take the cover off, click a module in, put a cover on, commission it, and you've got a working charge point. So all that business have future-proof their business.
Right.
They future-proof their business. So when they want a charge point, instead of it costing that one charge point would have cost, I reckon, because it's quite a difficult install, about 2,500 for 1 charge point. He's now got 1 charge point, and it would be very easy to get another 7. And his car park holds about 30 vehicles. So actually, because I don't want to take too much time, I just wanted to say something about data, if that's okay.
Very quickly then.
Very quickly, yeah. So basically, March 23. 16% of all new vehicles sold were 16%, and 8% plug-in hybrids. That's 22%, of which there were 65,000 vehicles, which is very low because it's straight-in times at the moment. On the equivalent March in 2031, 8 years' time, it will be 100%. So 100% of all vehicles in 2031 March, that's 295,000 vehicles in my very bad maths. So that car park in 8 years' time, and that will basically have a hell of a lot more. So that business will really appreciate their investment now to benefit them.
All right.
It is a struggle finding charging points in the UK. Last year we drove through the Netherlands, and there are the charging infrastructure is quite excellent. Charging points everywhere. Going to a motorway service area, and there's a choice of 28 charging points in one that we went to, all fast chargers. In Delft, where we were staying, there was in the city centre over 250 on-street chargers. It's incredible.
We just seem to be
some of them are free. Some of them are free.
We just seem to be so slow at this kind of thing, isn't it? It's a bit like cycle lanes now. Just miles and miles behind Europe on that. Anyway, we could talk forever about that.
We could.
Thanks ever so much for that, Richard. Let's talk about the Gloucestershire-Warwickshire Railway, Ian. How many? I mean, I've got a little stats here for you. In 2019, it had 144,000 passengers pre-pandemic, 14 miles of track, and when you opened Broadway, that had a massive impact on it. Give us an overview of the actual.
It did. We opened Broadway in 2018, and it did have a massive impact on our passenger numbers, because the railway at last was going from somewhere to somewhere, from Cheltenham to Broadway. And in fact, we're seeing often the first train out of Cheltenham Racecourse in the morning is often full, because people are going up to Broadway and spending a day in Broadway and then coming back later in the day. However, we've got a wide range of activities happening this year, not least of which is the Cotswold Festival of Steam, which kicks off on the 14th of May, and we've got a number of visiting locomotives coming. This does have an enthusiast appeal, I suppose, but it's also a great day for anybody coming, because there's in a very intensive timetable of trains. We've got a historic goods train running up and down. You can ride on the brake van of the goods train if you want to. We've got shunting demonstrations going on at Winchcombe. There's a beer tent, and Preservation Society stands will be there, and it's a real feast for the eyes and for the ears to see these locomotives running up and down. The theme is the Cheltenham and Gloucester Steam Days Remembered, and in fact at the end of Steam in Cheltenham and Gloucester, it was a very busy area. There are over 300 train movements a day between Cheltenham and Gloucester, and there were railway lines coming from places far away as Southampton, from Banbury, as well as the main lines, and the docks complex at Gloucester, of course, where some delightful little shunting locomotives used to shunt the wagons around. And what we're trying to do with the engines that we've got is to reflect the eclectic range of locomotives that you could see. It was a train spotter's dream, actually. You could see locomotives from all over the country passing through this area. So that's one event. We've got real ale days throughout the day. We do afternoon tea on the trains. We've got obviously one of our most popular trains is the Cheltenham Friar, the fish and chip train, and they always sell out. And so if you want to have a go on those, we've got several of those running during the year.
Fantastic. Just before you go, I just want to do some numbers really. So you've got 850 volunteers.
Yeah.
How much money does that all cost? What's the sort of turnover of the railway?
The turnover of the railway is probably about £1.5 million.
Wow, okay.
So it's a substantial business, and it's supported by the Gloucester-Warwickshire Railway Trust, which is a charitable trust, and they raise money for a range of largely infrastructure projects. And the big one this year is an appeal that they have just launched for £1.5 million to undertake essential repairs on Stanway Viaduct, which, if you like numbers, 50 foot high. It's on a gentle curve. It's on a gradient of 1 in 150. It's got 15 arches, and it was built in 1903. But the waterproof membrane on the top of the viaduct has failed, and so water is percolating through the piers and is damaging the brickwork. So a substantial amount of work needs to be done on it over the next 3 or 4 years, I suppose, and it's going to cost about £1.5 million. So if you're feeling generous,
so
you can go onto the website to find out about it.
You can go from Cheltenham Racecourse all the way to Broadway. And
you
back.
Can, yeah, and
you
will
train. And what's the
on
price
a steam
of a ticket? Well, what's the price of a ticket? Quickly, Ian.
That's a good question. We haven't increased our fares. Let's buy tickets.
It's like,
No, no,
like the conductor now.
yeah,
We have to move on, sir.
yeah. An adult ticket, unlimited travel, 25 quid. So
25 quid.
yeah, which is pretty good value, I think, for a day out.
Sounds good to me.
And,
Right,
and you
anyway,
get discounts for family tickets.
Let's Move on to the news, but into Punchline. Actually, we've only got a few minutes left, please. So, what's caught your eye in this week's Punchline, Stuart? What's the main story?
So I don't actually know whether it was last week or this week, but I just had to revisit the Billy 12 Trees retirement. I had the privilege of being at the his last game at Kingsholm. What a game it was. Gloucester got beat, but it was a fitting send-off in the sense of a fantastic game. Billy actually had the last kick of the game as well, a penalty which he just missed, but the house kind of rose for him. And what an incredible guy. I mean, really down to earth individual. I know you've interviewed him yourself, Mark, a number of times. An amazing servant to Gloucester, and really sad to see him go. A big loss for Gloucester, but I just thought worth revisiting that because he's been a fantastic advocate for not just Gloucester Rugby Club, but rugby players and Gloucester itself.
I couldn't agree with you more. Such a really nice guy, and it follows on the tales really of Charlie Sharples, who's also left, and Ben Morgan.
Ben Morgan, absolutely.
And Ben, what a lovely guy. All three of them actually. You couldn't meet three more humble guys, lucky to play the game, and for Gloucester as well. So fantastic. Thanks for that, Stuart. Richard, what's caught your eye in this week's Punchline, please?
Stuart nicked my story.
You can have the same story.
Sorry, Richard.
You can have the same story. That was
I also want to pay tribute to him. He's been a great. I'm a season ticket holder at Gloucester, and he's been a great servant to Gloucester. He's just the kind of player we like, and he's really done the business, and he has got us out of some big holes. And I think he played one of his best ever games when they had the big French game. What was the French? Then when they nearly beat. Is it La Rochelle?
La Rochelle, I think, wasn't
it?
So
absolutely superb. So all the best for him and his family.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, Ian, what's caught your eye in this week's Punchline?
Okay, well, a couple of things. I'm struck by the number of supermarket stories that are appearing in Punchline. Actually, both Sainsbury's profits hit by keeping prices down, and the merger between Asda and the EG Group, the petrol forecourt business. And again, the union claims that that's because Asda's falling on its knees, and that it will be bad for the consumer, and also obviously bad for employment. But I think buying groceries is something that is a challenge for every family. Prices are going up at the forecourt. All of us, of course, will realise that when we go around our local supermarkets.
No, and it's funny, we do run a lot of national stories, by the way.
You do,
always look for a local angle and what it fits to us, because at the end of the day, we all shop in Sainsbury's, we all shop in Tesco and all the others. And I think it's important to sort of communicate what's really going on behind the scenes. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. So I'd like to thank my fantastic panel for joining us, our wonderful sponsors, Hazel Woods Accountants and Business Advisors, and for you guys for watching us as well. If you like the show, please like, share and subscribe, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks for joining Punchline Talks. Bye.
Thank you, Mark.